Hello and welcome to Unplugged, an IIoT podcast where we explore the exciting world of industrial Internet of Things and automation. I'm your host, Phil Seboa.
G'day, Phil, and I'm Ed Fuentes. Well, Phil, we're very excited today as well because we're going to do a bit of a different episode today. We're joined by Arlen Nipper. Doesn't need much introduction, but we love talking to Arlen. He's definitely been one of those people who've enabled the IIoT, the digital transformation, together with Cirrus Link, have built incredible modules that just make the whole process of digital transformation and moving data using obviously MQTT. But over the last, I would say, well, Alan will tell us more. Definitely over the last few months, he's been talking about some of the new improvements to the Cirrus Link portfolio that have given extra tools to us to be able to use and take advantage of Unified Namespace concept, which has been growing dramatically in the industry, IIoT, digital transformation, and also some tools that make it easy around an MQTT client also. So, Arlen, thank you so much once again for joining us. We are very honored and pleased to have you here, and also congratulating you for 25 years as MQTT over the last month. I think that's
Yep.
been very key. So that's been important too. So thank you for joining us today, Arlen.
Thanks. Looking forward to it, Ed, Phil. I always enjoy it.
Today we want to take a second just to talk about our sponsor, Inductive Automation. You know, we've been involved with Inductive Automation for a long time now, and I just wanted to ask you, what are the benefits of using Ignition?
G'day, Phil. Oh, you're right. You and I have been involved with inductive automation. Actually, we got to know each other through Ignition. One of my favorite things here, Phil, and I think you agree, is that the unlimited nature of how Ignition runs. It's got unlimited clients, unlimited tags, come from unlimited PLCs or unlimited devices, unlimited databases. And on top of that, you can have as many designers open connected to it as well. So that unlimited nature for me, it just ticks the boxes.
Yeah, we're just kind of taking away all those traditional boundaries from software, the software SCADA landscape. So if you're looking for a modern approach to your application development, Ignition is the one. And especially, using the free download that's available on their website, you can start building today.
Yeah, and go and check it out in the show notes. Inductiveautomation.com.
To it, Ed, Phil. I always enjoy it.
Fantastic. And today's podcast is a bit different, Phil, because not only are we going to be doing a talk and conversation with Alan, but he's going to demonstrate some of the new key features. So for those probably listening through the typical audible audio apps, we would encourage you to go to the YouTube channel for this one and get some really good value of what Alan shows through the demonstration. But we'll probably do as much talking as we can to ensure that we've covered all the new modules that Arlen will be demonstrating today.
Awesome. So, Arlen, I guess if you want to jump in and start showcasing what you have today.
As we go through this, Arlen, give us a bit of an overview of what has caused or what has led you to Cirrus Link to build out these sort of modules. What's been this? And I'm sure you will, but I'm just giving you a bit more context around where you've been with the modules and what has caused this evolution in extra functionality.
Sure. And it's always been customer driven, Ed. I mean, probably 60% of the functionality of our modules are driven by customers' demand. And, typically customers have really good use cases for wanting to add these features. So I'm going to start with, this is the topology of the demo that we did this year at ICC. But as you know, with presentations like that, you don't get a lot of time to go deep into the architecture or each of the modules. So I thought I'd take the opportunity here. We'll cover what you and Phil wanted to cover, may cover a couple of other things as well. So in this diagram, what you see is we'll start at the edge, right? So we've got 3 Ignition edge units, and they're connected to a Chariot broker going into the engine module on an Ignition gateway. Now, you'll notice here that I'm denoting all of the MQTT Sparkplug in green, the new MQTT UNS, if you like, in yellow. And then if we get to it by the end of the demo, we'll show a bit of the Snowpipe streaming, taking data into the Snowflake data cloud platform. So what we'll do is we'll start with these edge nodes and connecting into Engine. Now, I'll give everybody a bit of a, I guess a cheat sheet, or whatever you want to call it here. So although, I'm showing 3 ignition edges, actually what I'm doing is simulating those in another ignition gateway. Now notice that here I've got a G1, E1, D1, G2, E2, D1, but in my root folder, when I set up transmission and I just point it at root, then the transmission module is going to create 3 transmitters, a G1 transmitter, a G2 transmitter, a G3 transmitter. So literally, because the code base is the same, everything is the same from ignition edge to the ignition gateway. This lets me set up, in this case, 3 swarms, but I could easily set up 300 by using actually ignition as kind of that huge simulator out there creating all these edge nodes. So with that, what we'll do is let's go into our ignition, and we're going to go to the MQTT engine. Now, in the engine, you'll notice here, I don't have any edge nodes, so it doesn't know anything about that. And I don't have any UDTs. So what we're going to do first off is we're going to go into our MQTT engine configuration. And here, the first thing we're going to do is set up some servers. Now, I do lots of demos, so I have a lot of servers set up here. But right now, what we're going to do is, if you look here, what we've got is we've got the Chariot 1 broker enabled. And if we look in our diagram for ICC, that is Chariot 1 MQTT server that these 3 edge nodes are talking to. Now, right now, they're connected and they're looking for a primary host ID, but Engine's not connected yet. Now, the other thing we're going to look at in this configuration now is that the other capability we've added. So this whole notion of a unified namespace, it's very interesting in that actually came about because of MQTT in the first place and Sparkplug, in the fact that you could organize your topic, with a group ID, a node ID, device ID, that started giving you a hierarchy. And then as you went into your ignition folders, that added more namespace to it. And people started to go, well, what if we organize all of our MQTT publishing so that when it ended up in the enterprise, we had everything arranged in the same hierarchy. Now, if you're using pure Sparkplug all the way through, the thing is that everybody was going, well, Arlen, all you're giving us really in the topic is a group, edge, and node. And then it kind of stops there. Well, it doesn't really, because within Sparkplug, the path to your folders, to your UDTs, to your tags, it's all in there. It's just that part of it is in the topic and the rest of it is over here in the payload. But people kept saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if that in Engine, we could see the whole unified namespace and maybe even get rid of the group, edge, and node, keeping track of that, but we'll get rid of that so you can see just your UNS namespace. So now in MQTT Engine, you can go into the namespace in Sparkplug B, and you can configure it to keep the classic MQTT engine topology, if you will, but you can also enable the capability to show kind of obfuscate the the Sparkplug topic and just go down into your namespace. So we're going to do both in this part of the demo. So I'm going to go back to general and again, enable MQTT right now. Let's go back to engine real quick and boom, we've got some UDTs and we've got our classic view of our edge nodes. Now here's my, from my swarm that I showed you a while ago, here's my G1. And since I'm doing Acme Inc., you know, I've got a coyote prop and we've got anvils and we've got anvil drop tests and anvil grinding. And then G2 from the Stillwater location, Acme Inc., Stillwater, we've got the coyote props for our TNT dynamite. And then G3, our location is from Vancouver, Washington, and that has the Vancouver area, our Roadrunner props, and it's going to do our signs, stop sign, yield sign, things like that. So this is classic of what you would get in Engine. Everybody's been happy with this for the last 6 or 7 years, but that is a lot of, you know, there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of information in here, but that doesn't lend itself well to just taking all those and go, okay, well, let's just drop them into a UNS. So let's go down here, same view. Now we've created a new UNS folder. And in that, we've got Acme Inc. And we've got Vancouver. Under that, we've got our Coyote props. And we've got our Roadrunner props. So what's happened here is if we collapse up here, now, and you can get rid of the classic view if you want, but now literally here we have a nice UNS going from my if you look at ISA 95, you know, here's my company, Acme Inc., and then here's my location, and then here's my cell, and then here's my devices. And so within the Acme Inc. namespace, I've got my 2 locations, Stillwater and Vancouver, and then I can start drilling down into my site and then into my devices. So anyway, what it results in is really nice UNS views. So you can imagine if you had 40 or 50 more of these sites, then they would all come in very nicely, quite well organized. Now, we still know the old path. We haven't forgotten anything, but so I can still go in here to one of my sites here, my CTNT. We go into my palletizer. Just looking for my set point, but everything is all of our tag paths and everything are saved here so that when you write back to them, your commands still go out just like they did. Everything's there. We still remember where they came from, but now you can see that you're using your folder naming, Acme Inc., then your location, then your cell, then your devices within the ignition topic names or ignition folder structure, basically to create any type of UNS you want to going forward. So any comments or questions there?
Not really, because we kind of leveraging the best of Sparkplug B, right? That's the idea around this option to then publish that into the UNS. So we're getting that, those functions that we know within that that structure. So your store and forward capabilities, your structure around your topic namespace, which is pretty awesome as well. So yeah, and UDTs coming through, which is pretty exciting.
Yep. So yeah, everything's still the same. We publish the UDTs from the edge. We publish all the infrastructure. And again, everything remains just like you would have, but now you're using your ignition folder structure basically to create your UNS. But, it's funny that Ed mentioned that this is the 25th anniversary of MQTT. And I'm thinking back of what Andy and I did in 1999 for Phillips 66 pipeline. And literally, unbeknownst to us, we basically created a UNS because Phillips had 9 pipelines. So we decided that each of the remote locations would be a pipeline number. So we had pipeline 1, pipeline 2, pipeline 3. And then on each pipeline, you have booster stations. On each booster station, you have a line. On each line, you have a PLC. And under each PLC, you had a flow computer. So literally, we were using a, quote, UNS, if you will, back when 25 years ago when we first started using MQTT on Phillips 66.
And in this part here, when it hits the UNS structure in the MQTT engine, and the ignition instance or whatever client is connected to it, and then adds more data, does it transmit via the UNS namespace to the other consumers of the UNS? So if this one becomes a node, we add more metadata at this location, does it then distribute across everywhere else as I add more data here? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. So yeah, everything literally that you would have had initially coming into this area in the edge nodes folder is literally available to you in the UNS. All we've done is maintained the routing to that, but
Mm-hmm.
the group node device in the Sparkplug had been obfuscated here, and now all you're seeing is your folder naming.
Yep.
So you can go any level deep, and here again, we've maintained. I'll turn on my I've maintained my all of my paths and everything, so I can come here on my wait set point and change that to 200, and that's routed through to your end node just like it would have been originally.
Okay.
So now if we want to take a look at this, going back to our topology diagram, so now we've got our 3 edge nodes are coming in through the MQTT server number 1, and we've got those in ignition.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the requests, it was kind of odd at first, but I think the more and more that we got into manufacturing, everybody said, well, Arlen, we just want to publish one thing, and we just want to keep publishing it. And it's really not Sparkplug, but it was having its use case in a lot of the manufacturers had little things out in the factory, a node red unit, a real simplistic MQTT agent that could only subscribe to just a few points. It didn't know anything about Sparkplug. They just wanted all of this information available. So that's where we did the UNS transmitter. So I can take any group of tags or any tag provider in ignition and set up a UNS transmitter. So let's do that right now, going into my ignition. So if I now go to my MQTT transmission settings, I've got a new a tab here called UNS transmitter. And in the UNS transmitter, I literally can go in and give it a tag provider. So we can point at MQTT engine, then point down to that new folder we just created, UNS, and then convert all the UDTs to just normal tags, and then just start publishing that. So now that I've got that set up, I can come in here, and now that I've got that enabled, come in here and enable my MQTT transmitter. So now if we go back to our topology, we are publishing all of the UNS, the tags that are in the UNS folder. We're publishing those using our UNS transmitter. So if I look at this chariot broker, what I'm going to see is instead I'm going to see literally a Acme Inc. / Stillwater / Coyote Prop / Anvil / Angle. And we're just going to keep publishing that. And it's going to be set with the retain turned on, or optionally, I've configured it where the retain flag is set to true. So think of, I've got an MQTT broker, and all of these tags now are going in there discretely. So if I had a process that was only interested in the angle coming from my Anvil drop tests, from Anvils, from Coyote, from Stillwater, from Acme Inc., I literally could have a little agent go out there, subscribe to that, and he's going to get JSON updates of all of this data. So how can we prove that? So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to the Chariot number 2 MQTT server and use the MQTT client to actually observe those UNS messages coming out. So let's go to our Chariot broker 2. Now, this is the same as you would always see with Chariot, but there's a new tab here called MQTT client. And with my client, I can set up connections, and one of those is to localhost to itself. So I'll connect to that. So now I'm connected to myself on localhost. And we'll go over here and we'll enter a topic. So we're subscribed to hash, and over here, there's all that data, but that's not very good. So let's go over here to our topic tree viewer. And here's Acme Inc., Stillwater, Oklahoma, Coyote Props, Anvil drop test. Let's go to our whole depth. Go down here, show most recent. And we are getting that on Acme Inc. Here's your topic in MQTT, not Sparkplug, but just a standard MQTT topic. And then here's the payload, where it came from, the whole depth, the data type, the value, the timestamp in milliseconds, and the quality. And so
That's
now you can have all of those whenever you want. Now, what we could do is go and disable the publishing. And then notice that, well, that's the last value that came in. The retained is false because, well, we subscribe to that. And so the only way that I can prove this is let's delete everything here. Let's go back to here and let's delete everything. And let's unsubscribe. And now let's subscribe again. And we'll go back to our topic tree viewer. And look, we're not publishing right now. We turned off the transmitter, but we still have all this information So let's go to our whole depth, and retained is true. So you can come in anytime after and always get caught up because you're going to get the last known good based on the retained topic.
Yeah.
And then also notice that we publish the properties as well. So since I was already subscribed a while ago, you didn't see that, but now you see it on retain. You see the Anvil drop test, the actual properties of the type string and the engineering units of inches.
And they're
So
usually published on birth, right?
right, they're usually published on birth, and so this is the equivalent of a birth, is that everything is published on retain. So if you're coming in after the fact, we've been running for an hour, you subscribe, you're going to get all of the properties on the retain topic as well as all the live values on the non-retain topic.
And is it the last live value, I'm assuming, before the node disappeared?
Right.
Or can you?
So
Yep. Okay.
again, everything was published on retain. Now, there's a word of warning here. I'm publishing everything on retain. So, I guess there's a warning that goes with this, is that if you kind of misuse this, you can overload pretty much any broker. Chariot, HiveMQ, even EMQ, Mosquito, because remember, brokers aren't meant to be huge databases. So, you can use this, but just be careful because you are creating a lot of retained messages that are actually stored in the broker. So, it's a shotgun. You can shoot both feet off.
Absolutely.
So we'll go back over here. Now, once we've got all of this, so we've got our MQTT Sparkplug data flowing up to Engine. Engine's configured to create a UNS. The UNS is then, we're using the UNS transmitter to break those out to other pieces of equipment on the factory. The way I see this probably in day-to-day use is they would have a Chariot broker or some other broker, on-prem that is interested in just getting those little pieces of data they want published in real time. But then if we go on and say, well, actually, let's go look at a UNS database, right? Not an instantaneous UNS transmitter, not things sitting in a broker that are being published Sparkplug, but let's get those messages and let's actually put those somewhere where you don't have to take care of the cloud infrastructure. So if you're on AWS, if you had, like Kinesis streams going to a Lambda, going to S3 buckets, and then another Lambda pulling them out of S3 buckets and putting them in RDS, all just to get some data on a dashboard. Grafana, Power BI, Tableau, anomaly detection, all that other stuff that you might be wanting to use your real-time UNS data for. So let's go back to our ignition instance here. So here we've got this notion of a unified namespace. Everything's coming in. Now, I'm going to drop out of this into probably a little more real world example. So we're going to go to a smart factory notion. So in my smart factory tag provider, again, I'm following the UNS convention. I've got smart factory 1. And then here I've got a building management system that this could be a BACnet IP, like a Johnson Controls or a Train, where this is actually hierarchical UDT. So I've got a rooftop unit with a compressor and a cooler. Factory energy. I might want to be looking at the whole energy coming into the factory. So we've got this notion. You had Renee on from Opto 22. Well, here's a Groove Rio measuring the KYZ. So I got my total energy. And then, I've got things like conveyor, a haul off, CNC, a paint booth. And then here on line 7, I've got this notion of a bunker and a dryer and extruder. Now, every time I do this demo, I point out that for the last 5 or 6 years, everybody in the industry, it was like, the executives went out and they had a big Microsoft or Azure seminar or AWS or Google, and everybody came back and they go to operations. Okay, guys, we've got to get all of our data into a data lake. And so people were doing that. And so if you look at this extruder as a folder, they were literally just taking all of their process variables raw, and they were, I'll show it diagram here. They were throwing them into a data lake. And literally they were saying, okay, guys, we're done. You've got all of your process variables in a data lake. But the problem is that without context, this data lake quickly turns into a data swamp. Because if I look at this 149 degrees Celsius coming from my extruder, well, I don't know. So if I'm in a data lake, I don't know where that came from. So I probably have to do a lookup in another database to find out maybe the engineering high and the engineering low and the deadband. And then I do another lookup to find out what factory it came from, and then do another lookup to see what line it came from. Whereas if we did this right, by the time we look at this process variable in our enterprise UNS database, we should know immediately it came from Smart Factory 1, line 7, extruder 7, melt temperature. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete the data swamp. Oops. And now let's take a step back. What do we want? Well, the first thing we would probably want to do is, before we just take all these raw process variables, we're going to want to go over here to our UDT editor, and we are going to create a model, the UDT, called extruder. Now, the first thing we probably want to do when we get it up into a cloud enterprise system is we probably want some asset information. So anytime this extruder thing shows up in the enterprise, we want to be able to have unique things that don't change that much, like asset ID, asset serial number, location, any other parameter that you would want to add to this model. When it shows up, then you can define that in the parameter section on your UDT. Well, let's cancel that. And now, once we've defined our asset information, again, think of that like OSI, asset management framework. So now you've kind of got an asset management system built into your Ignition UDT. Now we can go to our melt temperature. And again, we don't care where it came from. At one location, it might be OPC, another location might be Siemens, another location might be Allen Bradley. But what we're concerned about is keeping it consistent by always calling it melt temperature, and it's going to represent 0 to 225 somethings, and those are in degrees C, in our deadband mode, our scaling mode, and everything, even down to the tooltips, all of this contextual information we're going to have in this UDT that we just defined. So now, if we take a look at this, when we get to our tags, these are all UDTs. And when we expand it, and now look at the data type, it's not a folder called extruder 7. It is a model, a data type called extruder. So now we can drill in. I forgot to add parameters here, but we'll have an asset ID, asset serial number, location, and then we can drill into our melt temperature and have all of the contextual information of every process variable that we've got on this model called an instance of an extruder called extruder 7. Now, the good thing about Ignition is that once you have a model or UDT, you can create a template. So the engineers can look at that and say, okay, that looks like an extruder. Extruder feeds parts into a bunker. When the bunker gets full, it might feed parts into a CO2 dryer. Now, again, let's go back here. We might want our overall factory energy. That'd be nice to know. And then if we wanted to drill down, we could take an Opto22 EMU and connect it to the 3-phase motor that's on our extruder. But I guess my point is that on Monday, November 25th at 1:40 in the afternoon, this is a single source of truth of my factory. And I want to take that into a real UNS database. Because remember what I said a while ago, your broker is not your UNS database. And a lot of people get confused on the fact that your UNS database does not live in a broker. Yep. Like I said a while ago, if you had your entire factory publishing retaining messages, there's probably no broker in the world that would store all of those over time. So what we're going to do is we can go to the Azure or to the Amazon Marketplace and install the IoT bridge for Snowflake. And when we do that, remember the way that Travis and I think of Snowflake is kind of like a SQL database on steroids. It takes care of all of the underlying infrastructure. So what you end up with is, with proper permission, we created a node database and a stage database. And then we installed some schemas that are going to let you look at things. Now, one of the things to realize is that when we first started working with Snowflake, Amazon has the notion of a digital twin, which is great, but you're constrained to their digital twin. And when you take all of the information you could get from Ignition and you feed that through to Sitewise, it's got a funnel that basically rips everything off, and all you get is their notion of a digital twin. Same with the Azure digital twin on Azure. You're limited to what they thought your digital twin should be. But what you're going to see here is the digital twin that we get in Snowflake is going to be exactly what you defined in your UDT. And the schema we used in Snowflake, remember, Snowflake is a SQL database on steroids. So the schema we're using is Sparkplug. And so there's nothing magic. The IoT bridge is taking messages off of the broker and then using the Snowpipe streaming API, doing sub-millisecond insert into Snowflake. So if we go into our MQTT transmitter and go into our transmitters and enable the smart factory and configure it to point to the Snowflake MQTT broker. So we're going to do that now. Enable it. Save the changes. Now we should be connected to Seriot. Let me see which one I'm connected to here. That, okay. Yeah. Then we're going to enable our transmitter. So we're still publishing the UNS data here. And so we're publishing on two data streams now. We're publishing the UNS JSON data that we were observing in the Chariot broker, and we're publishing to the other Chariot broker that's connected to Snowflake. So we go back here to Snowflake. Remember, just a few seconds ago, we didn't have a schema called Factory One. Now we have a Factory One schema, and under that, we have views of all of our machines. Now, how do we do that? Well, remember, we're using Sparkplug as a schema. So what we did was we had a view called the machine registry. And literally what we're going to do is we're going to go look in all of those MQTT messages and find the birth certificate. And in the birth certificate, guess what? We've got the UDT definition. So data preview. And lo and behold, we found that we had an extruder and a dryer and a chiller and a cooler and a conveyor. Boom. So we're able to take this table and go up to our smart factory, and under the views, go find that extruder as a view. And without writing a single line of code, we now have our UNS. So our smart factory 1, line 7, extruder 7, and we have all of the process variables, and notice that every column is completely hydrated. So right now, with the tools on Snowflake, I could point that melt temperature at Power BI, Grafana, Tableau, anomaly detection, large language machine modeling, anything that I wanted to do with that data. And again, the nice thing is this is a managed service. So all I worry about is that I've got data in an SQL database and I want to go do something with it. Now, one of the things that I will point out that were troublesome, if not almost impossible, with all of the other superscalers and trying to get machine data out using MQTT. And remember, the big advantage here is we're doing everything report by exception. So we're feeding 80 to 90% less data in the Snowflake than grabbing every measurement every 1 second and just dumping it into a data table. Now, the way that we do that is we use the time series database capabilities of Snowflake. So here is the actual time series data. And I'll just tell everybody here, a sparse data set that doesn't have continual data, if you tried to feed this melt temperature, which is a sparse data set, into Grafana, Power BI, Tableau, they blow up. They don't know what to do with a sparse data set. So we're using the lead lag feature within a Snowflake to take the last known good value, because we know the state of data coming into Snowflake with MQTT, and we take that and we backfill it down to the next value that comes in. So you go from a sparse data set that IT would hate this, and we've created the as of view that takes and fills that out so that by the time it gets to IT and they want to use this stuff, boom, there you go. You're ready to feed this data into Snowflake.
Yeah, so we get the benefit
summary,
of the transmission method, and then populating all that data back up at the cloud level where you need it.
Right. And so here is your super SQL database. This is your UNS database. And then the other unique thing with that Chariot MQTT client is, let's go back to that. Oops. And so remember, we were measuring right here. Yep, all of these are changing. So let's go back into our, oops, our topic tree. And what I want to do is I want to go back. So get rid of those. Oh, sorry.
The wrong.
I want to go
broker.
to Chariot. And then,
When you connect.
oh, where am I back? Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So now with Chariot, we want to do wildcard there as well. Now, see Chariot. Let's take a look at our connections. Nope, not that one. I don't even have it in here. So let's do that. Cool. Let's add it. We're going to call this Chariot. And we'll put in its username. EON. And let's take a look at this. Okay, we're good there. It's going to be Chariot. Oops. .chariot.io. Setting at 8883. Let's use TLS. Say add another client. So Chariot. Let's add a connect. There we go. Now let's go back to our publish and subscribe for Chariot. Okay, so now we've got two subscriptions going on. If we look here, we've got our Chariot and we've got our local host. So now all of these messages are flowing in off of Chariot, but they're in plain text. So let's convert those to Sparkplug.
Oh, nice.
And now we can look at these and be able to come down here and look at the entire payload on each of our messages coming in. Now let's go to our topic tree viewer and we can explore our topics here in plain text still. So we're actually looking at the ASCII data coming in. Or we can go up here to our Smart Factory publishing the data. We can go down to line 7 and let's convert that to Sparkplug. So what we're able to do here is view multiple brokers all publishing data from a single MQTT client. So we were watching the ASCII text coming in from the UNS transmitter, and now we're watching Sparkplug data flowing up to the broker that we're publishing to that's going into Snowflake. Wow. So that's kind of an overview, Phil, of all of the stuff we've been doing over the last year.
Yeah.
It's really an amazing kind of development there, you know, being able to have that new MQTT client as well to view all those different, I guess, transmission methods across your enterprise is kind of handy when you've, you know, got an ignition instance and you're, you know, got many distributed brokers, maybe talking, you know, flat MQTT or Sparkplug. To have that all in one place is like gold.
Yep. Well, and you can come down here to Chariot 1. So if we wanted to go to So right now we're on that Chariot 2 right here. So over here, we'll go to Chariot 1, and basically it can monitor itself. So we'll go in here, we'll go into MQTT, and you can see that it has active clients connected to it, all of those remote nodes. But again, that's not so interesting. What we want to look at is Sparkplug. And now you get this mind map of, you got your Chariot broker, and then we had Edge 1, and then from that we've got D1, or you can go into actually the host is public. It's the host. I am host, and then you can drill into the edge nodes. You have G1, G2, G3. You can dig into G1 and say, okay, what devices are connected to that? Well, D1's connected to that, and you see the last time at birth. So you've got all of this Sparkplug information inside of that MQTT broker as well.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I guess one point that I've been asked about in more recent times is alarming with MQTT. I guess, is that something that you guys have developed at this point, or is that still early days?
Well, we just released that. Whoops. Drop my in here. We just released that. I really don't have this demo set up to demo, so maybe that's one we can do coming up, Phil. But now you can set up your alarms just like you would on Ignition Edge. They're published over MQTT to the engine, and they're managed, acknowledged in Ignition Gateway, just like you would a local device coming in, and the acknowledgments are sent back out. And that was just released here in the last couple of days.
Wow.
Hot off the press.
Yeah.
That's what Unplugged loves to be, right? At the edge of technology, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had that in this slide at ICC, but we weren't able to. So literally, this just came out in this last release over the last couple of days. So Ignition Edge, Ignition to Ignition Gateway, alarms acknowledged back to that. So yes, you can do alarms over MQTT Sparkplug now.
The features you talked about there, Arlen, around the UNS transmitter or the unit publishing UNS, is that going to be from certain versions onwards?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the latest release of Transmission now.
Okay, that's there now. Perfect.
Yeah, everything that I've demoed, the IoT bridge, you can download that for 90 days free. That's on the Azure or the Amazon Marketplace. The new addition to Transmission and Engine that I just showed you are both available now. And the MQTT Chariot client is available for free. So you have to download the Chariot broker, but you don't have to license a broker or anything. Just jump right to the tab for the client, and you've got a limitless MQTT client there for free.
That is awesome. Absolutely. I'm definitely going to be downloading, and look, we encourage, I guess, Ignition users to utilize this as part of their, I guess, chase for IIoT type infrastructure. The UNS transmitter is going to open up so many different opportunities for enterprises to leverage, that full namespace for their enterprise, where we start seeing, all these different disparate pieces of data coming together as a, I guess, current state of their business. You mentioned that that's quite a distinct separation from having a historical database, right? This is not a historical representation of your business. This is a current state of your business as well.
Yeah.
Right. And it's important. Yeah. And I think it's important to, with all UNS, everybody kept going back and go, well, Arlen is, Chariot must be the UNS database. And we go, no, that's only a broker. I don't care what broker it is in the world. It is there to provide message routing to whoever's publishing and to whoever's subscribing. It's not a UNS database. And so whether it's Snowflake or, Azure Digital Twin or AWS SiteWise, you've got to have something that's going to survive out there that becomes your single source of truth at all times.
Yeah, this definitely makes the whole concept of edge to cloud much simpler in the fact that you mentioned it's almost zero code in what you did today in the demonstration, especially creating that UDT really close to the edge. And I think you've always been a proponent, not just you, but in digital transformation, IoT, get the model as close to the edge as possible defined and a mechanism that propagates that model through the systems right up into what you mentioned, the cloud, to potentially that digital twin sort of concept or environment and Snowflake. So that's key. And in that case as well, it's backward if you were to add more metadata to the model at different locations. Does it also? It can also then accentuate across the other UDT models as well. So you maintain almost a standard across your infrastructure of what the UDT should look like.
That's Ed, that's the point, is that everybody was trying IT down to OT. They were creating models at IT, pushing down to the edge. And I can tell you after 6 years, that never works. You can try and try and try, and you push it down to the edge on Friday, and on Monday, Ed's going to go change something in the field. And then they got to go all the way back and start over again. If everything is single source of truth from the edge to the enterprise, that's the only way it's going to work going forward.
Yeah, it makes that whole concept much easier. Now, we do talk about this a lot, especially with customers, around getting their mindset in building and we all know it's out of the box, ready to go. It's extensible, it's scalable as it is now. As some people will now start playing with it, what's your recommendation? How should they do a little proof of concept for themselves? How would you encourage them to start a proof of concept?
Well, everything you're looking at here in this diagram, you can either download and run in trial mode. You can run the client for free. The IoT bridge is free for 90 days, and we can extend that for however long we want to. But, literally get started, go into Ignition Gateway, build a little very simple UDT, like I did with the Acme Inc. over here, very simple. Then publish it using the, turn off the primary host ID and publish it to a Chariot broker and take the Chariot client and look at it. And then, you could go to the next step and add the IoT bridge and see that data land in Snowflake. And all of this, and like I said, the only other way you have to do this is writing lambdas or Azure functions, and that's a bunch of Python code. And time again, I've already talked to so many customers, they have one guy that's writing all their Python code, and then he gets tired and he leaves. And now they've got a system and nobody knows how it works.
That's the part that gets rid of that issue where it is the visibility of the data structure is exactly how the business would see it. It's not unique to a particular person. It just brings it into real language, I suppose, that you've created, that the MQTT enables you to do, and especially the client, as Phil said, the ability to see MQTT Sparkplug be message payloads, because any other client, it's like you had web things everywhere. At least now you can make sense of the data by the translator you've built to the client. Perfect.
Well, thank you, Arlen, for this great demonstration of everything new from Cirrus Link. It's been an amazing episode today, and look, we really appreciate your support and coming on and showcasing it.
Anytime,
Thanks,
Phil.
Arlen.
You know, I love it. I love talking about it.
That's great. Thanks, Arlen. Excellent.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
We've seen this, like your demos before, and we can definitely tell that you're loving it every time you do it, which is pretty great as well. So yeah, to our listeners and viewers on this occasion, thank you for tuning in to Unplugged and IoT podcast. For more episodes with industry experts such as Arlen, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.